This is Track Attack.
What makes Italian cars so special? Is it history? Italian car companies are some of the oldest in the world and have some of the most interesting stories behind them. Stories of heroic spectacles of racing to feuds that spawned rival companies. Italian car companies take pride in their styling and craftsmanship. The personality of the company founder can be seen in their works of art. Italian cars have their own unique identity that comes through in the look, sound, and the experience of driving one. One of these Italian companies started with a Frenchman, caught the attention of Henry Ford, helped launch Ferrari, and is celebrating its 110th anniversary. That company is Alfa Romeo.
Okay, so we're here in the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Not the modern one though.
This is the 1967 Giulia Sprint GTV. The V stands for veloce, which in Italian means fast. It comes equipped with a 1.6-liter twin-cam, lightweight inline 4-cylinder engine, producing 108 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. And with a curb weight just a breath over 2,200 pounds, 4-wheel disc brakes, and an optional LSD, this car earns its veloce status.
So this was the, of course, really hot luxury sedan, I think they call it, from back in the day from Alfa Romeo. And I gotta say, sitting in this thing, going right with the driving. What a special car this is. I have to admit, when we saw it drive in this morning for filming, it just caught my eye way down the road. Just the stance of it in the road, and even the color. This car is in immaculate condition. It's a special machine. The engine itself feels very, very responsive. It's got some good punch to it. Now, of course, this car came in various engine sizes. This one is one of the smaller engines. This is the 1.6, I believe. And even for the 1.6, it's pretty peppy. The steering feel in this is surprisingly good for an older car. Wow. It feels very direct. It feels very responsive, especially for a bigger wheel. As soon as you even turn the wheel a little bit, the car just goes right where you want it to. It feels very firm. There's some good weight to the steering, which again, you usually don't get with a bigger steering wheel. So pretty neat, I gotta say, right off the bat. Pedal placement is actually really good for heel towing. I didn't expect that from this car, but maybe I should have, because again, Alfa Romeo, right? You could tell this car was meant not to be an all-out race car, but it sure was designed with sporty intentions in mind. It was designed to have fun and do some spirited driving. Let's start kind of pushing it through a little bit of the corners. Front end turn-in's really quite good. Back end rotates quite nicely and predictably. Wow. Huh. Geez, for such an old car, this feels quite good through the corners, I have to say. Wow, good job, Alfa. You guys clearly knew what you were doing back in the day. The car feels very light and nimble too. I mean, then again, European car from this decade, obviously they kind of all were very light and nimble. That kind of was a hallmark, I guess, unlike the American muscle cars of the time. Just driving this car, it feels like something special. just the sounds and the way it makes you feel on the road, and the fact that I literally feel like I'm driving a go-kart with a roof because this thing is so small. It's quite the interesting experience, I have to say. Okay, let's give it a bit down the straightaway. It's got a little bit of pep. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Pretty well sorted chassis, I have to say. Even over some of the rougher parts of the track, the car feels planted, feels very well sorted. Very nice. This is actually a really good driver's car. Again, this is what Alfa Romeo is about. They were building good, sporty performance driving experiences right from day one. And obviously, whenever you drive a modern Giulia, you really appreciate how special that car is and how good it is. But you really appreciate that car when you drive this car. Because again, this is the great granddaddy of it. And wow, you can really feel the DNA like in this car, traveling all the way through many decades, right up to the modern Giulia. Like I said, the turn-in, the balance, the fun nature of the chassis, the sporty engine, the steering on this is so good. I'm really wondering if the steering on the other Alphas are going to be this good, some of the older ones that we're going to be driving today. Wow, I have to say, this car actually is quite surprising. For a car of this decade, it's very, very well engineered. Like everything, like it's got some good power. The transmission actually feels pretty good. The steering is what's impressing me a lot. It's so direct, it's so good. The chassis of this car is very, very good. It's just a really good car, way better than I expect. That's all I can say. So overall, do I like this car? Nope. I love this car. It is so rare, it's very special, and man, is it fun to drive. Again, it's an Alfa Romeo. That sums it up.
In 1906, French investor and engineer Alexandre Darac built a car factory under the company name Società Anonima Italiana Darac in the suburb of Milan, Italy. By 1909, the company was going under, and he enlisted the help of some new Italian investors, and they formed a new company called Anonima Lombarda Fabbrica Automobili, or Alfa for short. In August 1915, the company came under the direction of entrepreneur Nicola Romero, who converted the factory to produce military hardware for the Italian Allied war efforts. The demand for munitions and military hardware dried up with the end of World War I, so in 1919, Alfa decided to start using their factory to produce cars again. The following year in 1920, the company changed its name officially to Alfa Romeo, following suit with its new owner. The same year, racing victories were won with the Torpedo 20-30 HP, the first car to bear the new Alfa Romeo badge. And one of those podium finishes was by newly acquired racing driver Enzo Ferrari. This is the 1974 Spyder. It comes equipped with the same sporty 4-cylinder engine found in the Giulia, but with an increase to 2 liters of displacement, now producing a healthy 132 horsepower. It is one of the most successful models ever produced by Alfa, spanning almost 3 decades of production. The body was designed, manufactured, and installed by the famous car design firm Pininfarina. In fact, this was the last project Pininfarina founder Battista Pininfarina was personally involved with.
Okay, so now we're here in the cooler, more Italian Miata. So the Spyder. I have to say, my very first impression of this car, as soon as I jumped in the driver's seat, before I even turned the engine on, is the pedal and steering wheel placement. So the gas pedal sits so high on the floor in terms of how close it is to you. It's so weird. So to get my seating position where I needed it to drive this car, my knee is almost hitting the steering wheel to have my foot on the gas pedal. And this is me we're talking about. Colin Casey, all 5'4" of me, I never ever have a problem with my knee hitting a steering wheel in a car. I usually can't reach the pedals. Right off the bat, love the styling of this car. It's super cool. It's very classic, very, Italian. I would love to just, top down, beautiful sunny day, go for a cruise in this thing. It's super, super cool. Oh man, switching from the gas to the brake is so weird. The pedal position, this is so weird. Maybe it's just because I'm short, maybe taller guys have it, I don't know. Anyway, this is weird. I've never run into this problem. I've yet to drive a car in my career where I cannot heel toe. I've driven some weird stuff, weird pedal placement, but I've never driven a car I can't heel toe. So the interesting thing is, our producer Jay, he bet me $1,000 that I could not heel toe this car. Oh yeah? This is for you, Jay. Check this out. Okay, so now that I've proven I can do a heel toe in this car, and I'm pretty sure I won't get that $1,000, thank you, Jay. Let's talk more about the rest of this car. So, great handling, typical little 2-seat Spyder Roadster handling. It's very light, it's very nimble, it's a lot of fun to kind of toss around. Let's kind of try out the engine here a little bit on the straightaway. So let's give it a bit of gas and see what happens here. Okay, about 3,000 RPM pull. Not bad at all. I mean, for something that came out of the 70s, it's got some punch to it. The gear ratios seem kind of appropriate for the power level of the car. Okay, let's kind of tuck it in some twisties here. Let's kind of see what happens. It's awesome. I really, really like this car from a styling perspective. Again, I don't think I would choose it for my time attack car, but I don't think this was designed with that in mind either. But in typical Alfa fashion, it is very sporty. It is very fun to drive. I definitely will not deny that. It's not the best for heel towing, as we already discovered. But overall, like I said, this thing is definitely a fun little sporty car. It'd be perfect for cruising around, looking cool in, and it definitely still will put a smile on your face if you're having fun, doing some spirited driving down a back mountain road or something like that. Okay, coming back towards the straightaway, let's try one lap with a little bit of pace and let's see how sporty the Spyder actually is. Okay, on to the main straight. Let's give it some gas. Yeah, it's definitely got some pep. Okay, heel towing in the third, or at least a poor attempt of that. The steering wheel does not let you heel toe. Okay, not bad through corner one. Okay, coming to braking zone. Heel towing, look at that. Yeah. Not the best one in my career, but sort of heel towed there. Okay, gotta shift gears again. Ugh. Oh, this is the hardest car I've ever heel towed in my life. Oh my God. Okay, let's get through this little section here. Good rear end stability, balanced car. A lot of flex in the chassis though. Okay, back on the brakes. Heel toe, sort of. Okay, let's get through corner 6 here. My God, why is the gearing such that I have to keep changing gears on this track? Oh, wow, that bump really upsets the chassis of this car. Woo-hoo. Wow. Yeah, when you start kind of putting a bit of pace through the corners in this car, the chassis doesn't like it. Okay, high-speed sweeper. Not bad through there. Again, the chassis doesn't exactly inspire a ton of confidence, but it's not too bad. At least for a 70s convertible, I have to give it credit. It's not too bad. I've driven more modern convertibles that feel a lot more wobbly than this. So that being said, I guess that's a point for Alfa Romeo there.
In 1929, Enzo Ferrari founded Scuderia Ferrari, the racing division for Alfa Romeo. The team was highly successful with its combination of excellent cars and talented drivers. A disagreement in 1939 between Enzo and Alfa's managing director would see him leave Alfa Romeo to start the groundwork for the legendary supercar manufacturer we all know as Ferrari. Despite this setback, Alfa continued to flourish in motorsports. The brand would continue to accumulate wins in everything from Formula One to touring cars and even grassroots racing. Alfa even had a successful brief stint in rally racing in the 80s. With such a long and successful racing history, Alfa is one of the top automotive brands for most wins in motorsports. This is the 1983 GTV6. This excellent sports car was a test bed for numerous automotive technologies in the 80s. It featured a rear transaxle like the C7 Corvette, which offered a better weight distribution for better handling. The car also featured an inboard rear braking system to reduce unsprung weight. It also sported some of the best handling characteristics of any sports car at the time, thanks to its sophisticated DD-on rear suspension system. Alfa even experimented with variable displacement technology on the GTV6. The fuel-injected version of the 2.5-liter V6, producing 155 horsepower, received rave reviews from automotive journalists at the time, many of which mentioned how the numbers on paper don't translate the true character and performance of this wonderful engine.
And moving forward in history, this brings us to the GTV6. Initial impression, like right off the bat, as soon as I even start driving this thing, first corner, this thing's pretty cool. The one thing I really like about this car is you can really feel the lightweight balance of the car. It's very light, it's very responsive, even though I have this giant bus steering wheel in front of me. The car still actually has really good steering response, great steering feel, pure rack and pinion steering. So I feel every little bump in the road that wants to upset my journey through these corners. You can probably hear already, I'm not revving it very high, but the engine's got a very nice exhaust note to it. Even as you get off the throttle, it kind of spits and backfires a little bit. Sounds almost like a canned muscle car. It's pretty cool. Even at idle, it's got a really lumpy idle. It's got like that muscle car kind of character to it. So it's pretty neat. Let's put it in second now. RPMs are a little bit higher. Let's actually try revving it out a little bit here. Okay, we'll get through this tight little complex here. Okay, turn it in through tight corner. Woo, this thing rotates really good. Wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, let's try it through little S here. Turn in is good. Okay, we got a little spot here. Let's give it some gas. Let's rev it a bit, see what happens. Well, again, not crazy power, but I gotta say, I really like the sound this thing makes though. It's pretty cool. Now, this car obviously wasn't all about horsepower. In traditional Alfa Romeo heritage, you know, they make really, really good handling cars. It's the character, it's kind of, you know, a big part of the soul of the vehicle. So, like some of the previous older ones, this car should have really, really good handling. Let's kind of start throwing it through the corners a little bit more and let's kind of see what it feels like. Okay, so steering front end bites really good. Okay, again, through a tight corner, wow, this thing rotates really, really good. And the back end really sticks through the corner. It's amazing. Definitely has to go, I think, with that 50-50 weight distribution, and you can really see how that unique suspension design we talked about really comes into play in these corners. So this was a really, really well set up car, especially for the 80s. This is what we're talking about with Alfa Romeo. It's the character of the car. It's the way it makes you feel when you drive it. And as you can see by the big smile on my face, I'm having fun. Okay, high speed corner again. Wow. I love this thing, I really do. Cars are fast, you know, they put down good lap times, especially modern stuff, but cars like this is what driving is all about. It's the relationship between you and the car, and this is what Alfa Romeo does best.
Since its inception in 1909, Alfa Romeo has been an industry-leading automotive manufacturer. The brand has always strived to push the envelope for cutting-edge styling and produce innovative new technologies. The first generation of the Giulia in the 1960s had one of the lowest drag coefficient ratings at the time, which inspired other manufacturers, such as Toyota, to produce similarly shaped vehicles. To meet the new strict American crash safety standards in the 1970s, Alfa formulated a design technique to incorporate bumpers into the overall bodywork design of vehicles so as not to ruin their design lines. This process was adapted by German and Japanese brands soon after. The 1980 2-liter 4-cylinder Spyder was the first road car in the world to feature a mechanical variable valve timing system. In 1985, Alfa introduced the first computer-controlled version. This was 4 years ahead of Honda introducing the 1989 Integra, Honda's first road car featuring its famed VTEC system. And even to this day, Alfa continues to lead the industry with patented technologies found in the 4C and the new Giulia. Fast forward to modern times, and you have this 2018 Giulia. Alfa is making a go at relaunching the brand here in North America after a 25-year hiatus. The new Giulia is everything the old one was and more. With an all-new modern chassis design, an award-winning Ferrari-designed engine producing 500 horsepower, and overall world-class handling dynamics, it quickly displaced the M3 as king of the sports sedans.
Okay, fast forward a few decades, and that puts us in this Giulia now. A lot has changed in 40 years. It is nothing like, well, frankly, any of the things I've driven so far today. This thing is a completely different machine. Right off the bat, I mean, as soon as I even sit in this thing, it feels like you're driving a battle tank. It's big, it feels heavy, but at the same time, it actually feels very solid and well put together. And of course, the ride is just, you know, light years better. It's just a completely different machine. The one thing you notice with all the older Alfas They have very fun little engines, they got a lot of character, they're very sporty, but man, you have to rev them out to make any power. This thing, you sure don't. That Ferrari engineering sure shows off in this car. This thing just makes power, like, period. Like, who cares what RPM you're at? You want power at 2,000, you want power at 5,000, the car's like, yeah, whatever. Just hit the gas, I'll figure it out. Let's put it in second gear, and then we'll kind of give it a bit of throttle, and let's see if this thing is quicker than the old ones or not. It probably will be. Oh yeah, it's just a little quicker, as you can tell by my head in the seat. Oh, and that was an easy trip up to 180 kilometers an hour. Look at that. Wow. This engine lacks character. It only revs up to 6,500, which, I mean, isn't bad, but I don't know, it just, because of the flat torque curve, it doesn't really encourage you to rev it out, which for me, it doesn't get me excited. I like working for my power. I like revving the engine out. I like the sounds. This thing doesn't quite do that. This thing, though, has massive carbon ceramic brakes. And holy smokes, when you want to slow down, this car has no problem doing that. Well, we're coming up to corner 1 here, so why don't we do a demonstration? Let's see if my face peels off. Oh yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, these brakes are just ridiculously good. Holy cow. Now, the other thing, of course, with this being a modern car is you do not have a manual transmission. You just get this weird little phallic-looking black knob down here. So, yes, I went there. But yeah, so again, it takes away from the driving experience. Paddle shifters are cool. Yeah, you kind of feel like you're driving a race car. But I don't know, in this car, being a big, heavy 4-door sedan, I kind of wish I had a manual. It would definitely add to the driving experience. The 3 Series is obviously one of the benchmarks for sporty handling 4-door sedans, has been for quite some time. Yet, this car easily displaces that car from the top. The handling on this car is just phenomenal. The first time I got to drive one of these when they came out on track was working with the students, got to drive their car, and wow, I was floored at how good this thing was to the corners. Like, we talk about things being like a Miata through corners. This thing's better than a Miata. It's just the front end grip is just so good. The weight balance just makes this thing rotate on a dime. Even under braking, the car is so balanced. It's phenomenal. Most modern cars, the steering sucks. I'm sorry. It doesn't give you good feedback. You don't get good feeling. This car, though, actually gives you pretty good feedback. Like, you can actually tell what's going on under the car. Now, of course, how much that's artificial, well, I'd rather not know, to be honest. We have to talk about the Alfa reliability. Yes, we have to get to that part of the show now. I was trying to avoid it, being an Alfa owner myself, but yeah, let's talk about it. So this is the Giulia Quadrifoglio. I'm sure everybody knows this car certainly has its fair share of reliability problems. Fingers crossed, so far today, this thing's been pretty good for us, so let's not jinx it, and hopefully I can finish the day with the car intact. Back end wants to come out. Oh my God, this thing's fun. Okay, high speed sweeper. Oh, yeah, this is an Alfa Romeo. Like, when you start pushing it around a racetrack, this thing is just so much fun. It's just such a good car. Like, you don't have to push it hard to really experience the driving dynamics of this thing. Like, yeah, when you drive it fast, you can really kind of explore what this car will do, and it's so much fun to do, as you could tell. But just driving around town, even just, you know, chucking it in the odd corner and just giving it a little bit of gas, like, it's a fun car to drive. I love it. The steering is so good for a modern car. The handling is great. It's got lots of grip. It's very predictable. As we said, the engine has just got gobs of power. The engine is lacking some character, but again, if this was like my daily, I wouldn't really care about that, to be honest. I love the styling of it. It definitely screams Alfa Romeo to me, the very sexy Italian lines and the curves and everything. I would definitely get it in red just like this. And again, for a fun car, I would normally want a manual transmission. But again, if this was like more of a daily, I could definitely put up with the paddle shifter whole thing, because the ZF transmission in this is quite good. It's just overall, the Giulia is such a good car. It drives nice, it's comfortable, it just does everything, except for be reliable.
While the Giulia was meant to sell to the masses as a real car that can be used in everyday life, this car was meant to capture hearts. This is the 2015 Alfa Romeo 4C, Alfa's baby supercar. This is a two-seat mid-engine go-kart. With a curb weight around 2,300 pounds in North American trim, this car makes a Mazda Miata seem heavy. It's about the driving experience and nothing else. It comes equipped with a bespoke 1.7-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. And in typical Alfa fashion, it comes with lots of performance elements baked into it. This is a mini exotic car engine. It has the best of everything: a 2-piece block, forged pistons, a forged crank, and a great oiling system. Combine this with a very advanced VVT system, and it's truly an exotic car engine. In stock form, it produces 240 horsepower, which leaves a lot of room on the table for power upgrades with this race-inspired engine.
And here we are in Alfa's baby supercar, carbon tub and all. And not only is this Alfa's baby supercar, this is actually my baby supercar. Yes, this 4C is actually my personal car. This is the car that I lap and I compete with and have for a number of years now. So you can say, yes, I definitely respect and enjoy the Alfa Romeo brand a lot. Speaking of baby supercars, this thing does everything a supercar does, but in my opinion, better. Now again, not talking about performance yet. We'll get to that in a second. I'm talking about the experience that a supercar delivers. So you get the exotic looks. This car's got that. Check. You get all the exotic interior nuances, shall we say, in terms of it's super hard to get in and out of. It's super tight and cramped. The seats have about a 1/4 inch of padding, and you know, all that fun supercar stuff. The driving experience, that's where this car delivers, and delivers more than almost anything I've ever driven in my career, which is the reason why I bought this car. It's basically a go-kart on steroids, like literally. The only way you're gonna get a more visceral driving experience than this car is maybe like the old Gen 2 Elise, like with the Toyota engine in it. Or if you start to get into something that like isn't even a car anymore, something like a BAC Mono, a Radical, you know, you get an Aerial Atom. In my mind, those aren't even cars anymore. They're kind of like track prepped go-karts and race cars and things like that. But no, it's the driving experience. This thing is so raw, so pure rack and pinion steering. You feel every little bump in the road. The throttle responsiveness is amazing. There is no sound deadening in this car at all. And let's give it some gas. Yes, that's all real noise. There's nothing being pumped through the stereo. There's no fake noises. No artificial backfires. That is exhaust, engine, valve chatter, transmission, turbo, all real car noises. So yes, this car is a visceral driving experience. You feel every single bump in the road through the chassis even, not even just the steering. I can feel it in my butt. Because again, there's like this much padding on the seat and there's no sound deadening. And this thing has very stiff track-oriented suspension. It's got low profile tires. You feel everything in this car. It's a full-on assault to your senses. It really is, but in the best way possible. Like that. This thing, obviously, mid-engine, very short wheelbase. It's a very wide car too. So it's obviously set up to really be very agile, very nimble through the corners. And it is. When you turn it in, the front end bites very well, especially for a mid-engine car. Because as we know, generally speaking, mid-engine cars don't necessarily always have that really aggressive bite initial turn in because they don't have any weight on the front. This car though, for a mid-engine, is quite good. It bites, it turns in, it hangs on quite well. Obviously in traditional mid-engine fashion, you're always going to have the back end wanting to come out on you. And in fact, that is one of my favorite elements of this car. This car is a bit of a handful at its limits. It puts out about 240 horsepower stock, about 270 pound-feet of torque. Mine is a bit tuned, however, so mine is somewhere in the 300 horsepower range and about 320 pound-feet of torque. So it's got a little more zip than the stock car does. And with the car being this light, you know, weighing in just under a Miata in terms of curb weight, and having that kind of power, it's actually pretty quick. Again, it's not going to keep up with Ferraris and Lamborghinis down the straightaway. I kind of wish it would, but you know, I think I'd have to invest a little bit more money if I wanted that to happen. But when you get it right in this car, it just feels like nothing else. Just the way the chassis loads up, the way the tires grip, the steering feels, everything about it. It just, there's very few cars that can really give you the same experience that this car can. And again, at the end of the day, that's what Alfa Romeo is really about, at least in my opinion. They've made great sporty cars and sports cars, performance cars for many years now. And the 4C, I think, is a really good example of what the company really stands for and what they have always done, and done very well.
Like Jeremy Clarkson has said on a number of occasions, you're not a true petrolhead until you've driven or owned an Alfa Romeo. After having the chance to experience more than 4 decades of Alfa Romeo's innovation and passion for building exciting, engaging cars focused on driver enjoyment, we'd have to agree. There is a certain unquantifiable magic to how Alfa Romeos drive and make you feel. It's a truly special feeling when you get behind the wheel of an Alfa and start to push it to the limits and beyond. It just rewards you with a poise and grace that somehow exceeds the sum of its mechanical parts. That is, when it works. It's no secret that the Achilles heel of the Alfa nameplate is countless stories of unreliability throughout the decades. It seems like Alfa knows how to build a fantastic car that works superbly, but only for a moment. Unfortunately, this seems to have carried over into their most modern offerings, as well, with all sorts of electrical gremlins being reported with the new Giulia. And this really is a shame, as these reliability issues have significantly impacted Alfa's sales numbers through the last few decades, causing them to rethink their strategy, moving to more pedestrian cars like the Stelvio and, to some degree, even the Giulia. Even a car as special as the 4C was overlooked for the likes of the Porsche Cayman and the Chevy Corvette, which brings us to a bit of a sad conclusion. With petrol engines slowly going the way of the dinosaur in favor of electricity, and car companies bowing to shareholders and profits, we may be seeing the very last in a long line of cars made for true enthusiasts. We can only hope that companies like Alfa will still strive to build innovative drivers' cars. But the clock is certainly ticking, which makes these examples all the more special. See you at the track.